Welcome back to the SENWA studio out here at Optus Stadium. It wasn't a great start to the season for the Fremantle Dockers. 78-point losers to Geelong down at GMHBA Stadium. It can happen when you play the Cats down there, and obviously Freo found playing them down there in round one a big ask. But thanks to Macca's, Surprise Fries is back at Macca's with 1 in 3 chances to win millions of prizes. Joe Brierty, the Freo Dockers Executive General Manager of Footy, joins us on the show. Joe, welcome.
G'day, Duff. Thanks for having me, mate.
Mate, have you just spent a few days with the helmets and flak jackets on after that, or the fact that 2 WA teams both had stinkers, does that dilute the fallout a little bit?
Oh, no, it doesn't dilute it at all for us, mate. It was bitterly disappointing. I guess the way we showed up, particularly in the contest, I think the first 5 minutes, we were happy with the way it looked, but then from there on in, it just didn't go our way, particularly in the first half. And our ability to, I guess, own the footy and allow our ball movement to kind of set us up and control the game in our forward half was particularly non-existent. So, we've licked our wounds and had a really honest review and really looking at what aspects of the game let us down that went away from the brand that we want to be known for. And I think, look, it's something that we take into this week and really set us up for a strong response going into Sydney.
So we just played a grab from Adam Simpson on Monday's show, and he talked about how in the past, when he was coaching West Coast, that he thought Fremantle could be attacked if they over-handballed, and he saw over-handball on the weekend. Have you addressed that as part of the problem against the Cats?
Yeah, I think I think our ability to find composed marks around the ground where we need to and control the ball, but it's almost an element of the contest where you need the ability to have really strong ball security and protect the ball carrier to let them into space, and then your composure by hand and foot allows you to kind of set up the way you want it to be played. So I think at times when you get the basics and the fundamentals wrong around the contest, you'll get obviously beaten on turnover, and that happened a fair bit where our ball movement early in the game on the weekend actually opened up opportunities for Geelong offensively. So, there's a bit of that in terms of where we can taking ground and making sure we can lock the ball away in our forward half, but also we need to make sure our ability to be composed in the contest against a team that really owned us physically in the game, had 89 tackles for the game, and it was well and truly an area where they got on top.
There was a question I was going to ask you, and Carlos on the Harvey Norman Busselton text line has also asked it as well. It felt like you got pushed around. Caleb Sarong said in the West Australian today, I noticed that you felt a bit pushed around. Sometimes it looks like, particularly when Nathan Fyfe isn't there and Hayden Young obviously wasn't there, that you're one big midfielder short. Where are people like, say, Anil Erasmus or Will Brodie at in the pecking order, given that they weren't picked in the absence of Fyfe and Young on the weekend?
Yeah, look, it's obviously a balance with the roles that are available, and Johnson played it, and he actually was able to be probably one of the better ones in the contest over the weekend. And then you've got the likes of O'Meara and O'Driscoll that provide different aspects of the game, and obviously Jager's a well-established midfielder. So from a physicality perspective, I think those players are able to come in and play the role. It just wasn't up across the board. We let ourselves down, as I said, in the physical aspects of the contest and our ability to obviously make sure that we didn't, I guess, collapse in on the ball and allow them to get on the outside, which occurred. And I think when we look at Raz and Will, they're definitely in the conversations in match committee, and they've got aspects of their game as well that they're working on. So I don't think there's one certain player that would come in and change the weekend's result. I think the weekend was about a weight of numbers across the board from a playing group perspective, and as I said, the physicality that Geelong were able to impose on us is something that we need to get back to, because it's something we pride ourselves on, our ability to stay composed and obviously allow ourselves to get our ball movement going from stoppage. We were a strong stoppage team last year, so it's something that we'll look at selection this weekend and how we get back on top of it, but I think it's an individual thing across the group as well that we've obviously talked about in review.
Justin said in the post-match that it didn't feel like you were ready to take on what Geelong threw at you. It's round one. How could they not be ready? Was that incredibly disappointing for you to watch?
Yeah, I think that the players themselves as well, and Justin talks to that, I think as a group we pride ourselves on making sure that we're ready to go for the season, and we know that it was going to be a tough test down in Geelong and what they would bring, but also we thought we had a really strong body of work over pre-season as a playing group, and it's a driven playing group that really want to set high standards for where we get to, and I think that's just the element of being really disappointed in the result. And I think across the first half and our ability to control momentum, probably particularly Duff. Like I think in previous years and particularly last year and consistently in games, we had a couple of those games where we kind of blew out. But I think our ability to not allow teams to get 4, 5, 6 run-ons of goals has been a real strong point in our game. So that was probably something in particular in the first half where we weren't able to control momentum of Geelong. And then in the third term, we were actually able to get the contest looking like we wanted it to, and lock the ball away in our forward half, and obviously we were able to score, but ultimately probably spent too many tickets trying to get back into the game, and then Geelong went over us in the last quarter. So it's something across the board that we looked at in terms of the preparation of the group and going into the game, and how we can assist them as an entire football program, because it's not just on the players as well. We all look at how we prepared going into that game.
When I look at the team as a whole, Joe, and I think, okay, that was a poor performance away, but you have the right of reply at home before we pass too many judgments on Fremantle as a club. Do you do the same with players? Do they get the right of reply, or will there be selection consequences to come out of that performance in Geelong?
Oh, look, I think it's a bit of both. We obviously look at what the best makeup of our group is and the accountability that we have for players to perform. I guess that's what we're in the industry for. But as a club as well, we also know that it's a 24-week season, I think. Even in opening round, we saw Collingwood's performance against the Giants and their ability to turn that around in a week. And it's a tight competition. And if you're off by 5%, 2% against good teams, and as I said, the consistency piece becomes really important. So we definitely, in review, kind of looked at all aspects of the game where we want to get back to our brand of footy, and our players and our leaders really drove that. But in terms of moving into this week, we're excited about the opportunity to come back and respond against the Sydney, who are obviously 0-2 as well, and they're going to be up for the contest. So we need to make sure we get back to our brand of footy. And then from a selection point of view, we'll look at all aspects of the team and what the base makeup is in terms of players that might come in that played at waffle level, or obviously whether a few players are available coming back from injury.
Alex Pearce spoke after the game about the need for players to be honest and the need to demand honesty from players, a bit of truth-telling, if you like. Did that take place, and was there some fairly brutal feedback given to players after that?
Yeah, I think I just alluded to it. I guess our leadership group are really growing in this space and want to drive those standards. So first and foremost, they take ownership of it, and then it filters down through the playing group from a review perspective. And the players are really honest in looking at their own games and obviously what they expect of their teammates in certain moments throughout the game. But as I said, I really know this is a very connected playing group that will learn from the lessons of the weekend and look to put things back in place. And really that enables us to kind of set up an environment for success where when we don't get things right, our ability to respond will be the true story of where we are as a club. And it's, as I said at the start, it's a 24-week season. We obviously, that wasn't up to the standards or the expectations that we have as a club, but we'll take those lessons into this weekend and look to put in a really strong performance against Sydney.
One more before we move on to this week, because obviously this week is a massive game. But for me, a bit of a head-scratcher was Heath Chapman as the sub. Can you explain how that came about, and also maybe how many defenders you played? Was there too many in the team?
Yeah, it was something we talked about in review on Monday, and looking back and reflecting on that as a coaching and match committee is obviously the number of defenders in the team. I think we look at the quality of the player in Heath and the fact that he got pushed out with Drapes coming back in, and Drapes actually did a pretty good job on Cameron over the first three quarters in particular. And then what does your back on a 7 look like? And it probably got to a stage where we felt we were going to be too tall. And then Carl Warner moved up into a wing with that vacancy being there for the team on the weekend. So I think Chappie, obviously, as I said, he's a high calibre player. And we think in the future there's opportunities for him to go to a wing, and whether on the weekend there was potential to do that, and rather he had to go forward because an unfortunate result with Sam Sukowski getting injured at that time. So definitely reflect on that and look at, as I said, what the best makeup of the group looks like, and our best 22, and obviously with the flexibility of the sub, you're always looking for someone that can play across all aspects of the ground.
Shea Bolton, what are the chances of him playing this week? Is there any update? I believe Justin spoke last night on 7 News about him needing to get through training. Are you confident, optimistic or hopeful that Shea plays this weekend?
All of the above, Duff. Look, it's one that we'll see how he. It's just you can't take any risks. I know that everyone's really excited about Shea and the player that he'll be for us, and so are we. We just need to manage this the right way. So at the moment, it's been really positive in the way that he's responded. He obviously got through a fair bit of training last week, but just had a little did of awareness still. So we just didn't want to take risks there. But he's continued to progress in a positive manner. He seems pretty buoyed at the moment about how he's feeling and how he's assessing. So as JL alluded to, he needs to get through main training tomorrow and pull up after that kind of 24 hours post in a positive way. But things are looking like they're progressing in the right way for him to be available. But the next couple of days will tell the story.
He was recruited to be that half chance into a goal player, but you found one on the weekend. Murphy Reid, 4 goals in 6 or 7 minutes, and 2 or 3 of them were the half chances that he converted into goals. That must have been one of the real bright things to come out of the weekend.
Yeah, look, when there wasn't too many positives to look to, it was a special moment for Murphy, and I think he just showcased his ability across the board, whether it was his ability on the lead as a small forward, but even his craft around goals. So I think we've alluded to the talent and the step up. He's obviously got aspects of his game that he'll continue to grow and get better at as well across the board, but that was a special moment. I don't think I've seen anything like that on the footy field in a debut before.
No, it was pretty special, and at three-quarter time we were holding out high hopes for a massive comeback win, Joe, and unfortunately that didn't come about. Is Quinton Narkle in the selection mix this week? I'm hearing a bit of mail that he might be about the place.
Well, he's obviously been building as well. He had a bit of an interrupted beginning with the club. He had some issues with a navicular as he came across from Port Adelaide, and then he had a minor hamstring setback. So he's been building, and he's with a number of players, and probably those senior players that were playing at Peel on the weekend. You talked about Erasmus and Brierty and Narkle, and Fife played a half of footy, and James Ash was down there, and Cooper Simpson. So there's a number of players that were at waffle level around the mark in terms of being considerations for AFL selection, and it's one where Quinton's just continuing to build into his footy, but all those discussions will be had tomorrow post main training.
Is there a chance you'll go with one ruck with Luke Jackson supported by Patrick Voss this weekend, Joe?
Yeah, look, it's definitely a chance. I think we've always said that we will look at what the best ruck makeup is for us going into a game, depending on the opposition, and Luke was able to have a pretty big impact, particularly in the third. Grundy's obviously a bigger body and a big man, and he does kind of take on a fair bit of the ruck load for Sydney across the percentage of the game. So it's something that we'll definitely talk about at match committee, whether it's Liam sharing the load with Jacko, or whether we look to bring in another tall forward that can kind of be our second ruck option, and Vossi would come into those discussions.
Joe, thanks for joining us on the show today. We look forward to a strong response, I think, from the Fremantle Dockers in what is a very big game against Sydney at Optus Stadium on Sunday. Thanks for thanks for coming on the show, mate.
No, I appreciate it, Duff. Thanks, mate.
Joe Brierty, he is the Freo Dockers Executive General Manager of Footy, coming to us thanks to Macca's. Surprise Fries is back at Macca's with a 1 in 3 chance to win millions of prizes. Back with more after the break.